Dr. Marc Schoenauer is a principal senior researcher at INRIA, the French National Research Institute for Computer Science and Applied Mathematics, which is an ecosystem of small and focused research projects. He has been working in artificial intelligence and evolutionary computing since the late 80s, that is, since the very early days of this field as we know it. He has been part of many associations to promote evolutionary computing, and he is the founding president of the Species Society. Welcome, Dr. Marc Schoenauer. It is a great honor to have you in the first of a series of Species Society interviews.
Yes, thank you. And well, thank you for inviting me. It's a great honor to be there as the first interview of this newsletter. So that's a shared honor. Yes, so maybe I will just come back to what you just said in presenting me. The 80s are not the very early days of evolutionary computation. I mean, they started back in the late 50s or 60s with the very pioneer that were like Larry Fogel and John Holland, and then you had in Europe Ingo Ruschenberg and Hans Paul Scheffel. So, and these were in the 60s, mid 60s yes. For the last one. So I arrived later. I mean, maybe I can be seen in the second wave of
okay.
competition.
Nice. That is already too much. Thank you for the interview and for being here sharing your experience and your knowledge with us. So, and according to Darwin, the evolution of a species is a very slow and gradual process since nature doesn't make leaps. And you have been in the evolutionary computing field almost since it exists. So you have seen the evolution of this field. And our question for you is, from your point of view, how has this evolution been? Was it always slow and gradual, or have you seen some abrupt changes on it?
Okay, well, excuse me. First of all, yes, according to Darwin, the evolution is slow and gradual. But according to Stephen Jay Gould, for instance, there's what he called the punctuated equilibrium. That is, evolution is a series of jumps, precisely, or at the geological scale, they look like jumps. And then some periods where almost nothing happened. It seems that everything is settled down. And then suddenly there is another mutation, who knows, or change in the climate or any other external condition, and there is another leap. So, okay, I wouldn't say it's always very slow and gradual. Now, to come back to the field, I think there were also some kind of sudden changes and then some slow evolution in between. So I said at the beginning it was a very well how to say yes, also I said the condition changed because at the beginning there was no internet. I said it was in the 60s, and so ideas were very slow to diffuse on the earth. And so you could have niches that were staying separate for years. So I mentioned John Holland and genetic algorithms in Michigan. There were Larry Fogel and evolution programming in California. There was Ingo Ruschenberg and Hans Paul Scheffel for evolution strategies in Europe, and they hardly met. I mean, or it took some time before ideas diffuse. But then at some point they start meeting, and that probably was the beginning of a leap, of a first jump, because they started to exchange ideas and they had some different approaches of the same idea to mimic evolution, to do some kind of optimization. Also in parallel, because we have to consider two things. the evolution of the scientific field and the evolution of the community, which is more
Yeah.
political than scientific. So scientific field, yes, there was some this uh, sorry, encounters of genetic algorithms, evolution strategies, evolution programming. They realized that there was not only one way to do evolutionary computation, but several. By the way, the words evolutionary computation did not exist in the beginning. It was coined
Yeah.
in the mid 90s probably. So every community has his own wording. But this was the beginning of something, and then another change probably came with genetic programming when John Kosa published his books, because it suddenly also took some momentum. So this was in the 90s. Then maybe there was some slow uh, period of slow evolution, but then there was also the rise of theory. At the beginning, there was absolutely no theory. Very, I would say, probably not doing justice to the people who tried at that time, but let's say very little theory, and then suddenly also grew, starting with another encounter with another community, people from theoretical computer science, and doing probability and the like. This arrived both in GAs, let's say binary representations and continuous representations. Then again, maybe there was some slow progress. And now what do we have today? We had the environment also that is important. And the environment today in computer science, at least close to evolutionary computation, is dominated by machine learning and deep learning. And now there is a sudden rise of interest again, maybe for evolutionary computation, with the eyes of machine learning and deep learning. So this is more a series of punctuated equilibrium, I would say, than gradual evolution. And in parallel, you also have the political evolution of the communities. As I said at the beginning, it was different communities, and genetic algorithms were the first ones to really become, uh, let's say, widely known, probably outside its own community. Thanks to Dave Goldberg's book, who was really instrumental to popularize genetic algorithm and hence evolutionary computation. And then, sorry, as I said, there was the encounter of the other communities, was evolutionary programming and evolution strategies. And they started to discuss, would they be, let's say, together to share conferences and share journals or the like. And I mentioned the arrival of genetic programming, which was another another branch. And as unfortunately always happens, they couldn't get together, let's say, peacefully. Probably some egos were a bit too high dimension. And so the result is today, it's getting better, but at some point there was like these two communities, one which is today represented by Sigevo in the ICM, after I've been being born as an International Society on Genetic and Evolutionary Computation, that turned into Sigevo, and the other one being at the IEEE brand, and one working group in the IEEE, part of the computational intelligence, let's say, community within IEEE. At some point, it was a fierce, not fight, but let's say competition between these two communities. It's getting better, some because maybe one reason is that maybe the early pioneers are not so influential anymore. But still, we still have these two parallel tracks, I would say.
Mhm.
That would probably benefit to get together at least from time to time. Still hopeful that this can happen.
Yeah, nice. Okay, thank you. It's a quite interesting story and nice point of view that we have this the scientific history and also the community history. Very nice, thank you. So you are part of the EvoNet project, the first European project on evolutionary computing. And within the context of the EvoNet, many events like summer schools were organized. These events are quite important because they allow people to share knowledge and to learn with each other. And beyond that, there is this human part, the meetings and having fun together. And I know that that people had a lot of fun in these summer schools. So in your opinion, in which ways can human connections contribute to science?
Yes, this is an interesting question. But before answering, I would like to come back a little bit to history because you mentioned EvoNet. So indeed,
Yeah.
EvoNet was one of the first European initiative dedicated to evolutionary computation. So EvoNet was, as the name says, a network. So it was not a project to that got money to do research, but a project that got money to create a community. And
Mm-hmm.
well, sometimes you can say it was a success because we have a species today and we have a real strong European community. While what I mentioned about ACM and HPOLY is more American than the rest of the world, though it of course has come out of the USA. But yes, Evonet was a very nice adventure, and we have to give back to Terry Fogarty the main merit because he started the story. He submitted the Evonet proposal, and yes, within Evonet there was some money to do things to create a community. That's something that's called today coordinated action or coordinating support action in the European Commission vocabulary. And so, with the among this money, some was devoted to do summer school, with the idea that yes, if you create some places where young people, because summer school, of course, as the name indicates, is is bound to attract young researchers and future researchers, but also, of course, their mentors, their teachers. But if you could get a place where these people could meet and not only work, as you mentioned, but also have fun, that would at least a few years later result results in a community that's more united than just letting people meet randomly at conferences. And again, I think this worked very, very well because, yes, this was probably this was probably why we still have so this EvoStar and Species working well. These are the children and grandchildren of these the people attending this summer school. Uh, and as coming back to the human side of it, again, we have to give the merit to whom deserve it. And well, I hope people all remember that this is Jennifer Willis, who was Evonet administrative coordinator and who stayed like the soul of Evonet even long after Evonet was terminated, only retiring a few years ago. And she was really the person who made this summer school so much fun, organizing events, games, whatever. I mean, you name it. Well, first organizing them to start with in remote but very nice places. I mean, there was in Southern Ireland, in Thessaloniki, or on the beach near Thessaloniki, in yes, in Szeged, on there. They all quite remote places, but once you're there, so you're all together, and it takes some time to go there, so it takes some time to go back, and so you intend to stay with the others. And yes, this because also the format of the summer school was to have teams doing things together. So really, this was the beginning probably of a community. One factor, of course. Another one being conferences, EvoStar, and other initiatives also. But summer schools and the fun you had at summer school, I think, yes, is an important thing. And today we can even more so regret it with the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, because we see that, yes, you can have online conference, remote conferences, but it's not the same. I mean, we all can feel it clearly and cruelly, I would say. So it was really an important fact, the fact that people get together and laugh and drink and eat.
Yeah, nice. So when we can meet, maybe the next year we can meet already, make a conference in presence. So in this can be important to vitalize our community, right?
Yes, we still don't know how EvoStar, for instance, 2022 will be. It's not yet completely decided whether it will be
Yeah.
hybrid or fully online. It also depends of things we don't have any action on, like the pandemic itself. So let's see, but yeah, hopefully it will. I wouldn't say become like it was before, because we learned some things, and in particular we learned that we can, let's say, travel less often, and for some reasons, like our CO2 carbon footprint, this is important too. It was on the table, but nobody had really played the game until the end. But the COVID forced us to do it. So we know it's possible. So we have to find, let's say, hybrid models, but hybrid that work, not hybrid like we have seen a few that are not yet really working well. But yes, we need to meet. We need to meet. I mean, in person. I mean, there's nothing like drinking beer or another beverage. I don't like beer, but drinking together or having a good meal together, or even a bad meal together, is something important.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. So you were part of this EvoNet that later became the Species Society. Which was the motivation for the creation of our society, and how do you see its future?
Okay, so well, yeah, Evonet, between Evonet and Fishes, there is a long period. Sorry, I couldn't remember how many years passed, but quite a few years, maybe 10 years or almost 10 years, where Evonet has started EvoStar series of conference, even though it was not called EvoStar at that time. It was a series of conference happening together. And then when Evonet started, EvoStar series continued, again, thanks to Jennifer Willis and others. And also, because you have to give credit to those who deserve credit, also to Napier University, where Jennifer was working, and who provided the, let's say, funding. Well, first Jennifer's time, of course, because she needed an employer that was kind enough to allow her to work for EvoStar, but also some to took the financial risks, and we used the Napier University seed money and their bank account to register and the like. But then Jennifer was closing retirement, and it was clear that Napier University also was evolving, and so their willingness to continue to help EvoStar decrease and was going to stop. So yes, main motivation was financial, in the sense that we felt that we needed some money to as seed money or to as backup money in case something went wrong, and not many people would show up and so and the like. But so at the beginning, so spaces were created. It took another 1-2 years before it actually started to play a role when Jennifer actually left Napier. And since then, Species has been the funding agency for EvoStar. But of course, and because EvoStar was very successful, some money started to come to Species, and Species officers and the board, executive board, realized there was money that could be useful to do more than just organizing EvoStar. And so some ideas were thrown on the table, and the most successful one probably is this idea of scholarship, because now EvoStar, or precisely Species, is able to fund some scholarships for internships of students who go to some other universities than theirs and spend 3 months there. And this is funded by Species. This is an example. I would like to say there are others, but there are not so many others. But maybe this can be seen as a call for ideas. Yes, there is some money now, and so if you have ideas to help precisely the community at large, and in particular people in the community that don't have so much money, like students, then your ideas are welcome, and you might be able to actually implement them.
Okay, thank you. That's really nice. So how do you see the future of this species society?
Well, it is related to the future of evolutionary computation. As I said since the very beginning, I mean, you have the community, and you have, let's say, the scientific field, and both evolve together. I mean, you cannot separate them. So, as a society, I would say it needs to, I would say, not needs, but it would be good to find other means to help the community. Organizing EvoStar is already very important, especially when EvoStar can happen in face-to-face. But the scholarship is another example. We need other ways. We are able to, within EvoStar, for instance, to create some animation for the students. Again, the students on the day before EvoStar, for instance. So there were a few initiatives, and we need more. But for this, we also need people to, people, let's say, more in the senior people of the community to give their time to animate the community and to perform some actions. And this allows to look back to summer schools, because yes, organizing summer school would be probably a good idea, but you need organizers and you need teachers and mentors for the students. So
Yeah.
you need people who volunteer their time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Nice. And you have not only numerous papers, but also many awards in your career. How is your best creation and production process? Can you see a pattern in the working process of your best publications, or each has its own history?
Yes, no, I never had very specific plans, specific career plans. And I would like maybe to rehabilitate, I don't know if you say this in English, a word that has a bad reputation, which is opportunism. I think it's very important to be opportunistic. in the good sense of the word, that is to be able to see opportunities when they arrive, and maybe to start working on a new field and the like. Excuse me. So I started working in genetic algorithms at that time, when it was in the late 80s, very early 90s. I was in some applied math department doing some kind of optimization, and I happened to bump into genetic algorithms. And it happened also that I had to give some, let's say, an experiment to students doing optimization in applied math. So there was some very routine job to be done. But I also decided to try to give them some optimization with genetic algorithms, or something that was, though I didn't know it at that time, not genetic algorithms, but already evolutionary computation involving some variable length representations to optimize, for instance, the route of a TGV train in a rough landscape. And it happens that it worked well, and that was how I met evolutionary computation, and then applied it to other problems where standard method couldn't even be applied. So that was really purely opportunistic, having just heard one conference by Hugo de Garis, by the way, another pioneer, though he was, let's say, a bit weird and never really made it through. But this is really how I came to the field. So going back to your question, and I've always followed this route. Opportunities arise, and you must be able to recognize them and size them. I wouldn't recommend to everybody to do the same, because in some sense you could compare this to the exploration exploitation dilemma that we all know very well in the community. Because as I describe myself, you can see that I'm more of an explorer. I mean, I really did very different things. I never stayed very long on the same problem, or the same strict domain or application or whatever. But you also need that some people be exploiters and actually remain on the same subject and really take everything that can be taken. And as I said, this is particularly important, for instance, in theory. You don't just do one or two theory papers and then go somewhere else, because probably you haven't really dig deep enough to help the field. And it happened that I did one theory paper long ago, but then I turned to something else. But thankfully, there are some people who really work hard on the same ideas and come to a real complete body of work that really makes the field advance. And this is true also for theory, as I said, in the binary representation or in the continuous representation. It's so difficult to get results that you really need to stay long in the area to really make the field progress. So going back to your question, no, I never had a pattern. I was really opportunistic, but I think you need both, as I tried to demonstrate.
Yeah, sure. That's quite interesting, this point of view, and comparing it with exploration and exploitation, because I think that's it. Like, some people are more explorers, other people are more exploiters. And if you know how you are, you just can be like you are and contribute with this, and then work with other people that work differently, but each one can help and make your contributions. It's a quite interesting point of view. So Would you like to give some advice to young scientists in this respect?
Well, of course, no. I'm not that. I'm not that pretentious to give advice. But
Okay.
a few things. I can nevertheless say a few things. I mean, well, you have to follow your ideas, yes, but you also have to be really rigorous. I mean, rigorous doesn't mean you're doing formal things. Rigorous, you have to do your experiment. You have to do rigorous experiments. I think this is very important. Sorry. And another thing is, I wish that everybody would be very open and transparent. You do something, you publish it, you publish your code, you publish it. You shouldn't be afraid that somebody will steal your ideas. I mean, you have ideas, they're there. Somebody will use them to do something maybe a little better, but that's how science works. So don't try to keep everything you're doing for yourself. I think this would be a great mistake for the whole field and the whole science, but also for yourself, because you only take benefits from working with others.
Nice. Two quite important advice. Thank you so much. And so to conclude our interview, do you envision the future of evolutionary computing?
Yes, I remember at some point I was saying, or to my students, or after a few beers, even though I don't like beers, that our goal should be to disappear. Us meaning people, researchers in evolutionary computation. so, so why disappear? Because evolutionary computation would be integrated to any optimization toolbox and would be used when useful and not on other issues, on other problems. And so we wouldn't need evolutionary computation scientists anymore. Of course, this is a caricature, and this is the other extreme. Then people say, no, we should continue to do the same thing over and over again. So the future is probably in between. I really hope that evolutionary algorithm appear in optimization toolbox at large. I mean, any optimization toolbox, for instance, appear in simulation that I don't know, in artificialized systems and the like. But of course, I think there will still be a need to better understand, to have better ideas, to hybridize evolutionary algorithm with other techniques, other fields. And as I already mentioned it briefly in the beginning, today is machine learning and deep learning era. It's everywhere, it's spreading everywhere. And I think here evolutionary computation has a kind of niche because it can handle any search space, I would say, provided you build and design the right variation operators, crossover and mutation. And so it allows to, for instance, try to find the best topology of a neural network. It can easily, well, not easily, everything, nothing is easy, but it can optimize in the space of possible structure. Like I mentioned, genetic programming optimizes in the space of function, which is huge, or programs, which is huge. So you have examples of nice work, because another niche is multi-objective optimization, and you have nice work with multi-objective optimization of neural net topology by people from Michigan State University, and Neil Bandhav, Deb, and Goodman and the mob there. And that's really something where evolutionary computation has a role to play. And a measure of success of evolutionary computation, I would say, was given also by OpenAI. You know, OpenAI, it's a deep learning company that and they published a paper 2-3 years ago already, discovering that evolution strategy could optimize the weights of a neural network sometimes better than let's say backpropagation or standard method of machine learning. And this was great. And now you see papers who use similar techniques with an evolution strategy, but they don't even mention evolution computation. So in some sense, it's a pity, but in another sense, it means, okay, the ideas are there and they will stay. And that's really a great. So you also have, you can also, sorry, use computation to optimize things that are difficult to optimize with traditional methods, like, and again, this is something that's very important today in machine learning, like explainability, because how do you find explainability? Well, nevertheless, you can try to optimize some deep learning stuff for explainability, because evolution computation can optimize very weird function on very weird search spaces. So there's still a niche there, many niches probably. And the thing I would add is we should always be aware of what others are doing and compare our results with others, not stay in our, let's say, private field to play between us. And that's maybe the other advice that I didn't give that I should have given at that time. But this is only that way that evolution computation can really not take over the world, but at least propagate and be accepted by others. Sorry.
Okay, so that's a interesting vision for the future, and also thank you so much for participating of this interview. It was really interesting, all things that you have said, and for me it was a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it too.